Welcome to the Rack Junkies podcast. I'm your host, Steven Ziegler, and today we've got a very good one. It is all about the anti-hunters infiltrating the game agencies. I have names, I have quotes, I have scientific research that is funded by the game agencies where they give money, specifically here in Ohio, to anti-hunters at the Ohio State University. You know, I'm a big Ohio State fan, and this is nonsense. I have all sorts of good stuff. We might even get a little bit into the DEI stuff in the game commissions and those sorts of things. We'll see how far we get. The reason this podcast is a little different is I kind of understand now that I have to get better at podcasting. I suck at everything when I start, and if you look at my writing, I've gotten really good at taking complex ideas and turning them into very simple concepts, very bite-sized chunks, and I've gotten better and better at that over the years. Well, the problem with that is that some of these topics are bigger than 2 paragraphs at a time, this being one of them. And as I improve and as I get better, I think it's very important for me to take all this information that I have and be able to articulate it in the podcast form better. I've done podcasts for a while. We used to have a podcast, kind of got too busy for it. But then, I've also been on a bunch of podcasts. I'm getting invited on all sorts of podcasts. But I think that it's important for me to be able to come on here and take all of the information that I'm getting. Because today I spent 6, maybe 7 hours just reading. Now for me with Rack Junkies, it's not really practical to do that, right? But I like doing it. It's important. It's actually my favorite thing to do. So that's why I've articulated numerous times how I kind of run Rack Junkies in my other pages. I do a philosophical post first on Rack Junkies, then I do something that's rehashed, then I do a news story, then I do a video. That takes some time too. And then I spend 75% of my time on one post that doesn't make me hardly any money. I mean, it does. I mean, we get hundreds of thousands of views on them, but they don't typically go viral. They're more in the weeds. Your hardcore hunters are going to pay more attention to them. People in government, high up in government, actually. I've been contacted by some people that if I told you and you didn't know me, you wouldn't believe me. But I know that the right type of people are paying attention to those because we've uncovered some things that are just crazy. Whether it was the whole Montana series with corner crossing, or it was the CWD where I went and I actually read the research for myself to see what it says. I talked with Dr. Seabury. In fact, I got a message from him today. He's the leading researcher, and he's like, it's the most corrupt thing I've ever seen in science is CWD. I dove into that. I spent hours and hours a day just reading the research. I looked at all the wildlife studies where they wasted money. Now I'm getting into, DEI. There's DEI policies in every single state that I've looked into. And we'll cover that in the next podcast. But it's important to know that they are trying to lower standards of biologists to make, and one quote that I have is, make sure that this room stops looking like us. Right? Those have been covered on Facebook, and you can look there on Rack Junkies page to see that if you want. But I'm going to talk about it on the next podcast. But what I'm on right now is the anti-hunters kind of massively infiltrating the hunting game agencies. And I have the names, I have the quotes, I have the documents, I have the funding. I followed the money, so I have the funding structure. I can point you directly with where the money's coming from, where it's going, what it's producing, and then how that's affecting hunting today. I have a closed circle, but that took me 6 or 7 hours of reading to do it. And if everybody listening to this, if all the hunters, just say all, let me take a step back here. If all of the hunters would spend the 7 hours that I spent today just reading about for this one post, which isn't even up yet, if you guys read the things that I read, it would change. If every hunter read it, it would change everything in hunting. Hunters would be the game, the meetings, the social media, everything would be packed. I mean, people would not shut up about this. It's that bad. I promise you. And we're going to get, again, I come with receipts. I don't say anything without sources, primary sources. I always go to the study. I always go to the grants. I always go to the quotes. I always go to the laws. I read them for myself, and I show you, I follow the money. Again, I started following the money with the CWD thing, and next thing you know, pretty much everything that has money tied to it in the government turns out to be corrupt in one way or another. That's not a left or right thing. I think everybody understands that the government is full of corruption, and wherever there's a massive amount of money, the U.S. government is the biggest company in the history of the world by a lot. $7 trillion a year in business. They spend that much every year. So there's gonna be corruption, and hunting is no exception. We have this belief that the people that we're funding, that are tax dollars, that are Pittman-Robertson dollars, that's going to the North American model of conservation. But I can show you exact quotes from where this money is going. The people who are getting the money openly advocating against the North American model of conservation, and this is out of Ohio State. The money comes from Pittman-Robertson. The money comes from the Ohio Division of Wildlife. I have the actual evidence in front of me, and I'm going to show it to you. This isn't conspiracy theories. This isn't any of that. You can look at the documents. You can look at the money. You can see the money changing hands. You can read their own quotes. They're not hiding it. That's the thing that people need to realize. They're not hiding it. But it's packed inside of this very complex and hard to understand system where it's even hard to find the data. But once you get there and you do all the reading, you're like, wait, are you saying the quiet part out loud? All of these things that hunters have been saying, and then some of the people who just trust the government or trust the game agencies, those people are like, oh, that's crazy, that's not happening. They're not even hiding it. It's right here. So I will be trying to improve my skill of podcasting to get better so that I can articulate these ideas, because I know a lot of you want more than just the 1 or 2 paragraphs at a time, where I dumb it down as much as I can so that somebody mindlessly scrolling social media might get a little nugget that they go, wait a second, that's crazy. I didn't know that was going on. I have to really put it into a compact, easy to understand, overly simplified version. But if I have a half hour, 45 minutes to talk about it, and you're sitting in a tree stand or driving to work, hopefully this will help you understand this topic better. So let me start out with, I'm not going to start with the guy from Ohio State. That's the real good one. But I want to start with the guy from Washington. So we're going to go over 2 people on this podcast. One is from Washington, and I got to grab his name here. I already put this post out. It's Fred Kuntz. So Fred, it was a commissioner for Washington State. Now, I know Washington is a radical left state. It's very, very Democrat, right? And it's Democrat governors will appoint anti-hunters to their commissions, to running their game agencies. I don't think that's really a surprise to anybody. But I want to make a correction here, because I don't want this to be a left-right thing, because not everybody who hunts, there are people who hunt let me say it this way. There's people who hunt that are on the left because we disagree on taxes. Like we disagree on marginal tax rates. We disagree on, maybe abortion. We disagree on, some of those issues, but they're still pro-hunting, and we find common ground there. And I think that's important for me to not. I've done this a few times, and in this post, I actually want to read it to people to show you what I shouldn't have done and make a correction. Here's the first line of my post. It says, everyone knows the anti-hunting left has been trying to infiltrate the agencies and commissions and control hunting. I believe all that, but I think that I need to start making the distinction between the anti-hunting left. I don't think adding the word left in there really adds anything to this conversation. The anti-hunters, every anti-hunter, I've never met an anti-hunter who was a Republican. I know that. So I think that I'm kind of accurate in saying it, but I don't think it adds to the conversation. There's a lot of Democrat friends I have, a lot of leftist friends I have that are pro-hunting, and we just disagree on other issues. So I'm going to try to get away from that a bit, but it's also important to remember that when you have a left-wing state, you will get more anti-hunting policies because their constituency is the anti-hunters. Okay, so moving on from that point, I'm going to read part of this to you guys just because I think it's important. If you didn't read this post or you forgot about it, I had never personally dug into this enough to prove it, so I started digging. I found example after example. The first one is Fred Kuntz. Okay, I've heard people say there's anti-hunters and non-hunters in our game agencies, and we know that's happening with the National Deer Association. The lady who, I forget her name, she's in charge of policy. She never even hunted until she started working for them. She was setting hunting policies before that. She shot 1 deer. Somebody tried getting mad at me, like, she didn't shoot 1 deer, she shot 2. Okay, whatever. She's not a hunter. She just got into it recently, and she's setting policies for people who've grown up hunting. That's insane. Like that's crazy. An agency that's getting $6 million a year, and she's getting a big fat check out of hunter dollars from grants and all sorts of government money that's supposed to be for hunters, is telling us how to manage our land. Shut up. No, that's insane. And she's not even qualified. She has a degree in agriculture and then a master's degree in international agriculture. Like, all right, congratulations on your degree in corn and corn in Europe. Good job. Yeah. Tell me more about prion diseases. Yeah, shut up. No, I don't want to listen to that. I'm not listening to you. You have no credibility. But the National Deer Association has lost all credibility. We all know that at this point. Okay, now, Fred Kuntz. He is a former member of the Washington Fish and Game Commission, a 9-member board that oversees the state's wildlife agency. Now, that's important because these commissioners, they're very influential in how policies get made. They don't actually make the final decision on a lot of things, but they do oversee these. Politics is an influence game. The people that you're around, the different people that are around there. Why do you think that you'll have lobbyists pay $100,000 just to have a 5-minute meeting with a senator? Because they know that the more they're in your ear, this is a game of influence. It's how politics works. And I have a unique insight into that because I've been so involved in politics here on the state level and even on the national level now to an extent. I've had some people from Congress call me. I think more because they were kind of worried that I was going to write something bad, or it was very strange. I'll just put it that way. I'll talk about that on a future podcast. I want to stay, again, I'm trying to get better at podcasting and staying on topic a little bit and finishing my thoughts and not getting sidetracked. But so this is an influence game. You have anti-hunters on the board. They are influencing what you can and can't do. And that is evidenced by what's going on in Washington right now. The wolf problem is a disaster. The people on the coast get to make all the decisions for the ranchers and the hunters out on the whole west or the whole east side of that state. Oregon, Washington, California, New York. It's the same for all of them. Now, actually, somebody offered me a TV show in the hunting industry, a little sneak peek. Signing that contract soon, maybe. Now he later became associated and works with Wildlife for All. Now, this is an important one. So when this is what I was looking for. I was looking for people who were in the commissions, in the game agencies that were moving into NGOs that were anti-hunting. Now, it's all over the place, right? Like the one lady who was the head of the Missouri Department of Conservation, Sarah Parker Paul, I believe. Yeah, she's on the Wildlife Management Foundation or Manage Wildlife Foundation, something like that. It's a radical DEI, over-the-top anti-hunting group that advocates against hunters openly. It's insane. I won't get into that one specifically today. That went viral the other day when I wrote about it. You can see it on Rack Junkie's Facebook page again. But you see these. That's what I was looking for, and that's what I found here with Fred Kuntz. He went from a game agency position to a radical left NGO where he's advocating against hunting. But what are they actually advocating against? Because again, I said that I have quotes. I come with receipts. Let me read. Wildlife for All, their executive director, gave a presentation titled, "It's Time to Decouple Conservation from the Gun Lobby." That's trying to shut down Pittman-Robertson money because these people at their core do not want us in the gun industry. This is a clever move on their part. I'm not going to lie. They don't want the Pittman-Robertson money coming from the gun lobby because, that money is being used. Well, it's supposed to be being used to help, wildlife laws. I'm not going to get into all that, but they want to take away part of that Pittman-Robertson funding so that they can control the hunting industry. Okay, I hope that's clear enough, but that's only a tiny minor point what I'm trying to get at. And the organization promotes replacing traditional wildlife management systems with ones based on multi-species justice. Yes, that's right. This is Fred Kuntz. He went over after left the Game Commission, multi-species justice. What does that sound like to you? It's anti-hunting term. It's a nice way of saying I'm an anti-hunter. We need multi-species justice. Just means that we can't shoot them, can't hunt them, right? They need justice. They need protection just like we do. That's what they stand for. That's Wildlife for All, who Fred Kuntz moved over to. Now, what else did they say? And, quote, an ethic of coexistence. Yes, they want ethical coexistence with wildlife, meaning you can't hunt. These are people that are openly anti-hunting. Washington, your game commissioner, appointed by the governor, is now working with an anti-hunting group. I have 20 of these examples that I found real quickly. So don't think this is just one because I dove into the specifics on it. That's why I'm bringing up this one. The group also opposes right to hunt, right? If you have right to hunt in your state and the Constitution, Ohio needs to do that. They also celebrated permanently eliminating the spring bear hunt. Okay. My whole point of this is there's the quotes, there's the name, there's the position, there's where he stands as soon as he leaves, and you can see what Washington's what hunting looks like there. You can, I mean, just look at, everything else going on there. I believe I got that right? That was Washington. I got so many different names in my head from this. Yeah, Washington State. I've got so many names in my head right now from all the reading I did today that I'm getting a couple things confused. I'm trying to keep them straight. So basically what I'm saying is you have commissioners. They're moving straight out of those positions and into anti-hunting organizations, openly anti-hunting organizations. That person was in charge for years and years and years of that region of the state and was advocating against you. And your dollars were going to pay him. That's insane. That's not okay. And again, I have 20 examples of this. I'm not going to go over all of them because I want to kind of move on from this. But just know that when people say anti-hunters are infiltrating the game agencies, well, here's your example. Here's your quotes. Here's the NGOs he works for. Here's the primary source data. Their own words are right here in front of you. You can't deny it now. That is a massive problem for us because this is not even the half of it. So let me pull up my notes here. We've got, now let's go to Ohio. Let me move on to Ohio a little bit. So one problem that I had when I was looking into this was not just where is the money, not just anti-hunters working for the agencies, non-hunters working for the agencies. Again, let me make one more point before I move on because there's another thing I want to kind of cover real quickly. You also have a lot of biologists that work for the game agencies that do not have your best interest in mind because they're not hunters. You have a lot of non-hunters, some girl that just liked her science teacher in high school and got good grades in science and didn't know what to do and was told she had to go to college, goes and gets a degree in science. What do you do with a science degree? There's nothing to do with a science degree except for work for the government or teach. That's it. Like there's very few jobs out there. You spend 4 years in college, rack up $100,000 in debt. How are you going to pay for it? Well, the government's a good place to do it because, you're going to get a job at an NGO making $300,000 when you're done. So, I mean, there's a pathway there to get rich off of our tax dollars. And so you have a lot of non-hunters that working for the game agencies is their only option. And they might even be really good. They might be very good scientists. Let's say that they are. Say they have their master's degree. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that this hypothetical person, there's a lot of them, there's varying degrees of good and bad here, but let's just say they're really good. They're not, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Famous expression. When you are not a hunter, you're not necessarily even thinking in terms of how to preserve hunting. You're not thinking in terms of how to advocate for hunters. You're thinking in terms of you grew up in a city. You don't understand us. You don't come from our culture. You don't represent us. And you're being paid by us to tell us what to do. Okay? That's a big problem inside the hunting industry too. The problem is that we can't really, that's a tough one to prove. How do I prove somebody's a non-hunter unless I go and just ask them all individually? I mean, I'm not saying this is game wardens. There's biologists that are hired by the state game agencies, and a lot of them are not hunters. I mean, I have people messaging me all the time, hey, I worked for them, I'm telling you. Ask people who work for these game agencies. They'll tell you openly, yeah, there's a lot of people that don't hunt or never hunted. They just got a job. And not all of them. There's some good ones out there. I'm not saying that. But, but to move on, I realized I was actually kind of asking the wrong question. What I presented to you, I think, is bad enough. I think that it's, I think it's horrible. I think it's a real problem, but it's not even the biggest problem we're dealing with when it comes to anti-hunters infiltrating the hunting industry. And telling us what to do, which really gets on my nerves. I've always had a problem with authority. Anytime someone tells me what to do, I immediately want to do the opposite. That gets me in trouble sometimes. It's I think why I'm probably good at the social media thing, but also gets me in trouble. There's pros and cons to my personality. I'm not going to deny that. But the guy's name that I'm going to talk about now is Jeremy Bruskotter. Bruskotter, okay? He's an Ohio State professor. I haven't even put this out there yet. Basically, he works for Ohio State. He's a professor. He does research, and he gets a bunch of money, and there's specific grants here. I don't have those. Actually, you know what? I probably should pull up those grants. I want to make sure that I have, again, all of the primary source data. Here we go. He works, so the Ohio Division of Wildlife gives him money for studies. And let me say, when I say studies, I say that loosely because a lot of these studies that I found, or not a lot, a section of these studies, there's a certain type of studies where it's just basically they're running polls, and that's what this guy's doing. You're running a poll, right? Like think of the election where they're just constantly running polls, right? Here's a poll, there's a poll, and then like you have talking heads telling you what they mean, right? Like CNN. You know, what was the one of the polls said that Iowa was going to go for Kamala by like, I don't know, like 16 points or something. It was like crazy. And you had a radical left, Kyle Kalinske, I think's the guy's name, was like, yeah, Trump's going to get smoked. Kamala Harris is going to win every state and Iowa. And, you know, we're going to win all the Senate. And like, he's just wrong. Well, that's a lot of what goes on with your government money. That's like that same thing happens, but we pay for it. And that's the grant that I'm talking about here. The Ohio State got a grant that went to, I can't remember this guy's name again. I have too many names in my head. I'm trying to pull up all at once. Pardon my delay here. I have too many notes. Again, this is my problem, is that I can't articulate all this stuff into 2 paragraphs at a time. Jeremy Bruskotter. We'll just call him Bruskotter. Yeah, that's the guy's name. All right, now I'm back here. Now I'm on track. So he got a couple $100,000. I forget what the exact grant amount was, but there was a couple different grants. And it was, one went to researching coyotes. One was for a poll. Okay, and these two are connected. And basically he advocates openly against the North American model of conservation. In fact, his paper he wrote after the poll, let me pull it up right here. I want to give you the exact paper. You can find this online. I've got a bazillion people trying to call me. Research someone at Project Coyote. Yeah, he worked for Project Coyote. Okay, here's the title of his paper, 2026. This just happened. The title of his paper is "The North American Model of Wildlife Conservation is an Inappropriate Basis for Formulating Conservation Policy." He's openly advocating against the North American model of conservation, the greatest form of conservation ever known to man. It produces more opportunities, more animals, more wildlife, more protections, more. I mean, it's the best. I mean, we're great. Far better than even what Native Americans did. You know, I mean, they were horrible to wildlife in a lot of situations. As soon as they got horses, they wiped out deer. You know, they would run massive amounts of buffalo off of cliffs and waste them. And that's not allowed in the North American model of conservation. We've improved on some of the more archaic, horrible versions. Even if you look at Africa, like I understand Africa's model, why they do it. It's just ours is better. And he's openly advocating against it. That's the name of his paper, is how it is inappropriate to have the greatest model of conservation in all of human history. It's inappropriate to base our policies off of that. Okay, this is a guy who got money from the Ohio Division of Wildlife and got Pittman-Robertson money to fund this. Okay, this was funded by that money. Again, I'll post the, you know what, I got too many notes here. Here's the grant money. No, that's not the grant money either. Yeah, $131,500. That's how much the grant was. Yeah. I don't have the actual grant numbers pulled up here. But what is that word? Suffice it to say, I almost got screwed up there. Suffice it to say, they are giving money, the Ohio Division of Wildlife is giving money to a guy who's openly writing papers and then giving those papers to the Ohio Division of Wildlife. Like this research they're getting policies from the university, the Ohio State University. So that's how this works. Man, I don't think I'm explaining that as well as I should. Let me take a step back to the beginning here and explain why this is a problem. Every state that I've looked into takes a chunk of money from their game agency and gives it to universities to fund studies, and then says they do it. In Ohio's case, it's so that we can have the best science, right? Yeah, but you're giving the money to anti-hunters who are conducting their own studies, and a lot of these studies are just surveys that they get to make the conclusions on, and they say, well, the conclusion is we got to stop hunting. Who would have thought, right? Like, who would have thought that if you give $1 million a year, which is what the Ohio Division of Wildlife gives Ohio State, is $1 million a year to conduct studies, and they give it to anti-hunting professors like this professor right here, that they're going to come back with a conclusion that we shouldn't hunt. We're funding our own demise here, people. We are funding we are funding them destroying hunting. Okay? This isn't anti-hunters necessarily. This isn't the person on social media with the fluffy dog. You know, every single person that's anti-hunter that complains about my post, if you go to their page, they got a white schnauzer. Yeah, like the dumbest dog, like the ugliest dog. I hope my mother-in-law doesn't listen to this. She's got a schnauzer. But, like every person that does that is just this dumb white schnauzer, this like little, I don't know, they're fluffy little, like, rabbit-sized dogs that are like poodly hair, that are just, in every single one of them you can go there. And every one of you guys knows it. Check it. Fact check me on this. Every one of the people that are just on there complaining, like, oh, you're taking over their habitat. You're in their home. They always have a stupid, ugly white rat dog in their profile picture, and it's disgusting. That's animal abuse, if you ask me. Any dog that can be easily scared to death by a rabbit is not a dog. Okay, that used to be a wolf. Okay, we took a wolf and turned it into a fluffy little piece of prey. That is animal abuse. That's an unpopular opinion amongst some people, but I think most people agree with me on here. If you don't, that's fine. I don't need everybody to agree with me all the time. But my point being is that it's not those people that we're fighting against. Those are just the loudmouth, annoying ones on social media. But the ones that are actually making an impact, the people that are actually destroying your right to hunt, the ones that are really coming after you, they're not those illogical idiots, the stupid people online. That's not who's coming after you. It's the professors. It's the people in the game commissions. It's the wolves in sheep clothing throughout our entire game agencies in every state and all the way up to the federal level. And I see it time and time again. Again, I'm giving you two examples. I'm giving you specific papers. I'm giving you quotes. I'm giving you NGOs. I'm giving you funding numbers. I wish I had I was going to read the actual grant number, just because I like to, more and more I'm trying to show sources, because as our society progresses maybe forward, as we move forward as a society, credibility is more and more important, because you have just a lot of slop online. You have a lot of people that just will find a way to do some mental gymnastics to just, and we all see it. We see it from both sides of the political aisle. I think that's the easiest way to explain this, is that you have so much from both sides. Just, if Trump does something, one side will say it's good no matter what, the other side will say it's bad no matter what. And, so it's hard to decipher who's somebody that's really digging deep into this stuff. And I want that person to be me. That's my goal. I want people to see Rack Junkies, see Steven Ziegler's name on there, and go, oh, this guy read the actual paper. This guy spent hours reading this research. He spent hours reading, I'm reading right now the USA versus ESA is a book. I read like a third of it and then kind of got bored with it. And then I picked it up again, right? Like, so I'm trying to read through all these things. I'm trying to read the primary sources and give them to you, so you can not trust me, trust the sources, right? I'm giving them to you. And I think that after the, I know that this is going on YouTube, so, what happened in 2020? When that happened, people stopped trusting the media, rightfully so. They stopped trusting the scientists, rightfully so. I think there's pros and cons to both of those things. But the goal of what I'm trying to do now is to be the most educated, to read the most documents, to read the most research, and to talk to the most real experts. Again, let me take a little side trail here. It's just like, CWD 19. You have your Fauci, which would be like Grant Wood. He's works with NDA and some states. He's never researched prion diseases, never researched CWD, never. He's that's not even what he does, right? And then you have Dr. Christopher Seabury, who's the leading researcher on CWD in the country, and that's a guy who's saying, hey, there's a ton of corruption on this CWD-19 research. And I talk with him on a regular basis. He texts me, he emails me, he calls me. He's normally a hard guy to get a hold of, but I wrote some articles on him, and he likes me for some reason. He thinks what I'm doing is a good thing, and I appreciate that. He's I'm trying to talk to the actual experts, the ones who really know what they're talking about, and read their research and read everybody's research and look at things from all angles. And I hope that you guys see that I'm doing that. And I hope that over time I can improve my skill set here to not just give you some of these facts and not just show you, hey, here's the grants, here's the money, here's the, blah, 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 blah. And not just attract the type of listener that wants to get into the weeds, but also be entertaining at the same time. So I'm working on this as a skill. We're at a half hour. I try to take a half hour, 45 minutes. I don't really have time to get into the DEI stuff yet. So I'm not gonna jump into that. I'll probably do that on the next podcast. But I want to I have a list. I actually have a list here. Again, I've got piles of notes here. I just talk into my phone, where there's just a massive amount. Sorry about this, guys. Again, like I said, great podcaster. I will get better. I don't even know how to pause my own podcast. Anyways, that's not, I don't know where it's at. But I have an example out of Wisconsin. There's somebody from Wisconsin who's an anti-hunter who worked as a biologist. There's one from Florida. There's a Florida game commissioner who is now an anti-hunting commissioner. This is happening. I guess that's bring this full circle. This isn't just a left-wing state problem. This is not just a problem that you're going to deal with if you live in California. I mean, California hunting sucks. They have the best habitat for hunting, and you can't hunt there. I think of huntable acres, California has slightly less than Montana. It's like 7% less, if I'm getting that correct. But they kill like 28 times more elk, right? So I mean, like, this does have an effect on how. Man, I really wish I would have. I have a post written on that I've never posted yet, but these are real. We all understand, even if I don't have the exact numbers on this one. I think most people agree that when you have these anti-hunting states, there's less hunting opportunity. That's I think a basic point that we can all agree on. My major concern here is that if you're in Florida and you're like, man, I'm living in the conservative state, right? Like, that's the Republicans' California, right? Like, that's what it is. And you've got anti-hunters on your game commission. Well, not now. He left, and then he worked for I think it was a wolf project or something like that. It was an anti-hunting organization. I found these in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Florida. I looked at the conservative states too. Alabama has anti-hunters infiltrating there. And this is just what I could find in the matter of a couple of days. And that doesn't, and there's a bunch of them that are hidden in there that I'll never be able to find. That are, if an anti-hunter gets a biology degree and their only job is to work for a game agency and they're actually an anti-hunter, they're going to get a job. Maybe they're going to have varying levels of influence there. Maybe they can only have a little influence. Maybe, they work their way up and have more influence later. That's how this works. It's happening all over the country. We can see it. And if you're following Rack Junkies on Facebook, you'll see the documents, you'll see the sources, you'll see example after example after example of this. I'm probably going to post one every 3 days, because if I do it every day, the reach goes down. People get bored with me doing the same thing over and over. And so I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, that this is not just a problem that is happening in Oregon, where or is it Oregon or Washington that has it on the ballot to shut down hunting? I can't remember. It's one of them. Either way, doesn't matter. You have literally ballot measures that are trying to eliminate hunting from a state. Okay, but those same types of people are in your game commission in any state you're in. If you're listening to this, you have anti-hunters in your game department. You have them in the universities, which are funded by the game departments to advocate for policies like we saw here in Ohio. And that's actually an even bigger story and a bigger problem. My problem is, this is a post I have for tonight, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to take this much information And even with me talking to you right now, when I've been talking for 35 minutes now, even with 35 minutes, I haven't been able to articulate everything that I know. And that's the importance of this podcast. I hope that I am able to kind of condense things into bite-sized chunks for social media, because that's where I get millions and millions of views, hundreds of millions of views a month. So I'm going to try to get better at the podcast. Tell your friends about it. Give me some ratings. I hate to be this guy. I sound like, like and subscribe. I'm like a millennial. I'm 38. I guess I am a millennial, but I hate to do that. I never ask people for anything. I don't have sponsors. I don't even have like subscriptions. I guess I do have subscriptions on Facebook. People found that, and I set it at the lowest amount because Facebook makes you. And I actually have a bunch of people giving me $1 a month, and I never asked for it. I don't like to do that. But if you could give me a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube, this goes on YouTube. I don't watch podcasts on YouTube, but I guess a lot of people do, and you can actually kind of make money when your podcast gets big on there. So again, I don't make any money from this, but if you could give me a review, I think it would help to get this information out to people. We talk about how we want to combat the anti-hunters. I'm trying to do that. Hopefully, you guys, if you're listening to this, send me messages. Comment on the Spotify has a comment section. Comment. Let me know. I'll read them. I'm interested in what you guys got to say. And let me know. Hopefully we can talk. I'm going to be getting into guests at some point. I have some really big guests that I could get on. And I just wanted to develop my skill as a podcaster over the summer before doing that. I also want to have anti-hunters on. I want to have, ordinary people. There's some commenters that on Rack Junkies, I go back and forth with a lot, and they're actually really smart people. And I'm like, they make some really good points. I want to talk to some people like that, kind of like the Theo Vaughn thing where he does like female truck driver or trash man or whatever, those like just everyday people type of thing. I want to do some of that as well, just so you guys know where this podcast is heading. But thanks for listening to me, guys. Let me know what you think. Follow me on Rack Junkies. Share the stuff. If you ever see that little interested button at the bottom below my post on Facebook, that is the number one signal to, if you push interested, it'll show you more of my stuff. And it's the number one signal to get something to go viral. So, the anti-hunters will angry face a lot of my posts, and that helps suppress it. But if you like it or you push that, interested button, that helps kind of override them. And I've been attacked extensively by them, including a lot of threats. I'm not even supposed to talk about it right now, but there are some real legitimate concerns. And one last thing I'll say, I was invited on a couple of podcasts that dropped out from having me on because of the things they were seeing online, the threats, people reaching out to them, mad, anti-hunters, and it kind of spooked them. One of them wants to reschedule. One of them just said, I don't need that in my life. My podcast isn't, I've got a wife and kids. I get it. But I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. So just so you guys are aware, that stuff is happening. There is a fight going on. Like it or not, there's a fight going on, and we have to be in it or we're going to lose. So thanks for tuning in. I will be here next week. I'm going to be very consistent with this, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.